Thank you, Mayor West. All right, now let's get into it. Let's start with our first keynote of the day. We have Kelly Bissel from Microsoft. He's going to be talking about the evolution of cyber attacks and preparing for the future. So help me welcome to the stage Kelly Bissel.
Everybody, you know, when Mayor West came out, it was playing the theme song to Billie Jean. I thought he was going to break out in some moonwalking. But fortunately, that didn't happen. So look, we're going to spend 50 minutes today talking about what's going on in the world around cyber, and then what the future is, so we can really look to the future. And before I came up here, I told my wife that I had to fly to Toronto, and she said, well, what do you have to do? And I said, well, I have to give a presentation. She said, how long is it? And I said, 50 minutes. She said, I don't even want to hear from you for 30 seconds, much less 50 minutes. All right, so we're going to go through some things, and these 5 things that I want to walk through. So the first thing is what is the evolution of cyber? And what does it mean for everybody, so we can look in the past, so we can see what's going to happen in the future. We're going to go through those current global threats, and some things are on the slide and some things are not on the slide, so we'll talk through some of that. And then we're going to go through, gosh, why is the CISO job so hard? Why is it so difficult? And what's changing with the CISO role? And as a old recovering CISO myself, I want to paint us a picture for what the future looks like for a CISO and how to make the job easier. And then, what is Microsoft doing to make this better for everybody? Because it's not just we're here for software as a whole, but how do we change the market? And I'll tell you that if you mark this day in 2023, this is a new era for cybersecurity. We are transforming the market. And I don't say that lightly. Being someone who's been in this market this is my 25th year in cybersecurity, this is a true new era that I think we're going to make the world better, but it's going to take a lot of hard work, and it's going to move us from just a vendor to a customer to a partnership with you. And so we're going to talk about that. And then I love to give everybody homework assignments. What are the 5 things that you need to do that's going to help you be best protected against cyber attacks? Fortunately, it's not 100 things, it's not 200 things, just 5 things if you master, I think you can be as safe as you can. Okay? All right, so let's jump into this thing. Evolution of cyber. Now, this slide right here is what I call the 4 L's. So the first era was around learning. People just wanted to hack in and see if they could do it. They wanted to learn how these systems worked. They want to understand, how is the internet being formed? And if you see a little small picture here, so that's Robert Morris, Rob. He created the first worm. But he did so he could learn, how is this internet forming? What he didn't realize is he was creating a big DDoS attack against companies. But this is a learning phase. And then we moved into laurels. These hackers wanted to gain fame. They wanted to gain notoriety. They wanted to make a name for themselves, either in the hacker community or writing books or sort of driving policy or some other things. So if you could see this sort of swirling storm forming, and then we move into loot. How do I make money? And we're sort of in between loot and leverage, but I'm going to tell you about that in a second. But loot is how I gain, whether it's financial gain personally or driving economic gain within a country or an industry, or how do I use that to fund other operations that I have. So we're in this loot era right now, and then we're fully, especially since the first Ukraine war, or sort of action, we're in this leverage where governments have woken up. They've become super mature on cyber to what's called the 5th domain. So you got land, air, sea, space, and cyber. So cyber is that fifth dimension of operations within military, and they've become very good at using that for their advantage. Some of that leverage is done for influence operations, changing sentiment within societies, within countries. Some of that is changing perceptions of laws or perceptions of how companies act or governments act. Changing elections, or at least influencing elections. So this is a really critical thing in that David Sanger from the New York Times, he wrote a book called The Perfect Weapon. Anybody read that book? It goes through a history of cyber warfare from back, and from a U.S. point of view, back from the Clinton administration. And I think it's a really good read if you wanted to see the history as it goes through. But we're in this evolving storm. And the question is, what's next? What's the next L? And this is what I'm sort of focusing on, studying the market and what we need to do so that Microsoft can help you protect against the next L, okay? So that's it. I do have a couple of pictures up here around, in this case, a North Korea hacker that was under the FBI most wanted list, and because he was actually creating ransomware to actually fund other operations out of North Korea. The other one in front of the person in front of the car, his name is Hush Puppy. That's his nickname. And Hush Puppy is a guy who stole about $35 million based out of Dubai and was using that to promote himself, which was kind of dumb because it got the attention of law enforcement, and to actually create other fraudulent actions. So now Hush Puppy's in jail. He's wearing an orange jumpsuit now, not a white one. But I think it's important to understand how this storm is evolving and what we need to do as practitioners to be able to make this better. All right, so cyber trends by the numbers. And I'm sorry for the folks on this side, you probably can't see this too much, but look, it costs the world 8 trillion Canadian dollars a year in cyber. So that's 6 trillion US roughly. And for the time I'm going to spend up here, so we got 1,000 attacks a second. And for the 50 minutes I'm going to spend up here, it's about 3 million attacks. So the question is, how can we withstand 1,000 attacks a second in my organization or your organization? And I'm not going to go through all the numbers, but you see it. I mean, look, they can move within 2 hours of access. They can move laterally within the organization. It's a difficult thing to defend against. And what it means as practitioners that we have to be able to detect super fast, prevent, yes, but detect super fast so we can prevent the exposure that happens throughout the organization. Once any sort of vulnerability is published, whether it's Microsoft or any other software vendor, it's only 14 days to take advantage of this. So you have a very small window of understanding the vulnerability and being able to protect against it. And so I think we have to think differently, and I'm going to show you a little chart, but we got to think differently about how we secure our organizations. All right. The last number on this slide is troubling for me. For vulnerability that's already known, already has a patch out there, 78% are 9 months old, meaning we're not patching our systems. We've taken an approach of, I'll patch these systems if I can. But what we have to do is you better patch now, even at the risk of breaking an application. And I think that we have to rethink our DevSecOps function to be able to be far more resilient in the patching of our environments. Okay? All right. Why are they happening? Why are they still happening? And this is a little chart from beautiful data or beautiful numbers. I can't remember what it is. And I brought it up because I just wanted to show the evolution of attacks getting more frequent and bigger. You read in the paper that the attacks are more sophisticated than ever. That's not true. Still, 98% of the attacks are elementary, unpatched, no MFA, no privileged access, no good identity management, password vulnerabilities. Those things are happening every day. And I just think that the formula why we're getting more attacks is because this is one of the few industries where crime actually pays. You've heard the adage, crime doesn't pay? This one it does. And so when industries are changing and the pace of technology is changing so I can't secure it fast enough, laws and regs are behind, so they're not actually with current tech, so it handcuffs me. And then the rise of cryptocurrency obviously is really feeding that loot, that L, okay? So that's what the formula is. Here's the good news. I've seen law enforcement around the world, Interpol, Europol, FBI, others, attacking exchanges, attacking's not the right word, holding exchanges accountable to fraud and ransomware. And that is actually making the attackers a little bit more nervous, which makes me happy. So I think the formula is bad, but it's getting a little bit better. And I hope that governments around the world will continue to pursue attackers with us. What it means is you, everybody in this room, have to be able to not only protect against the hacker, but find attribution as best you can and work with law enforcement early, because the earlier you work, the better. Okay? All right, next slide. I wanted to go through a couple of examples of just a few industries, 3, to show you that this is not one size fits all. It's not, it doesn't matter if it's a bank or a pharma company or a retailer or whatever, but this is a value chain, a simple value chain for life sciences, pharmaceuticals. And what it shows you here is the attackers are after very different things, and some are more high risk than others. So clinical trials, R&D for intellectual property theft and so forth is super important. So we have to think through the lens of industry. If you look at power utilities, totally different, very different from this slide. And this is a complex thing from generation back to the consumer for power. If you look at media and entertainment, very different again. If I showed you healthcare, very different. Bank, very different. Retail, very different. And I guess the point what I'm trying to make is everyone in this room has to be a really good cyber person, but also an extremely good business industry risk manager. And if you're not that, then you're missing a trick. And so my encouragement is to know how your company makes money through the value chain of the business, know where the weak spots are and the cracks, know where your third parties are and where the weaknesses of that. Because the more you know about the plant operations or finance or clinical trials, the more safer you can be applying those right controls. All right. So I wish these slides built because it would be better. I have animation of these slides, but being a nerd, Jean-Luc Picard, this is my Jean-Luc Picard slide. And what it is this is something that I think you can remember, so P-I-C-A-R-D. P is for platform. For 25 years, we've been in this best of breed approach. And when I was a CISO, I had 83 vendor tools. So I was talking to a CISO last night at dinner. He had 113 or something crazy. Who's got more than 50 vendor tools? Just 2 or 3? 4 or 5? Who's got more than 40 vendor tools? Not many? Okay. So I think what we're doing is we're at the age of platform for security. Much like SAP and Oracle EBS were 25 years ago. And so I think you have to think about how I move my security mesh into a platform so I can do more with less. The I is for intelligence. And this is where we can't normally see the attacks coming fast enough before they get here. And if it's almost like a boxer in the in the ring, but with blindfolded. You don't know when the punch is coming. So what Microsoft is trying to do is, how do I take all the signals from all over the world, 69 trillion, just found that out yesterday again. So it's grown, 69 trillion daily signals. How do I make sense of that and then give you insights so you can know when something's forming against you? We're not there yet, but that's exactly where we're going to move this market in a different direction. So you don't have a blinder on, but you can see the punch and defend against it. C, Cloud Rush. Look, I think this is one of the most important things in our era, and I don't mean Microsoft, I mean in my 30 years of working in this space, is finally we have a platform that helps us be resilient. And we have elasticity of any cloud, so we can ebb and flow based on our processes, based on our needs. But what we have to do is get the governance right. Because sometimes we have groups in our company spin up another cloud instance with no MFA or no other encryption or other controls, and we have to get the governance right in our own organization for cloud. Because you can get breached in the cloud. The next thing is AI, an emerging tech. AI is critical because we cannot see things as human, 69 trillion daily signals, without the use of advanced technology like AI to predict models. And that is where you've seen in the news probably, we're pouring tens of billions of dollars into this to make so that you can benefit. It's that simple. We're going to pour all this that very few companies on the planet can do so that you can be safer. And not just AI, but confidential computing. Yes, we've done a ton in quantum, and then there's a bunch of other things we're doing, but AI, I think, is the near-term solution for us. And then regs. Who loves new regulations when they come out? As a CISO, you have to not only protect the company and make sure everything's safe, but also be compliant. And that regulations are getting more teeth. And not just in one jurisdiction, but multiple jurisdictions that maybe don't have agreement on those regs. So both geography as well as industry. And then we got data. Of course, everything to me sits with data. We're talking about sovereignty, we're talking about privacy, we're talking about in the core data usage as well as edge computing. So this Picard model is important to think about when we're making decisions for where we are today and where we're trying to get to. So that's my nerdy Jean-Luc Picard model. Any questions about this? All right. Okay, so why is the CISO's job so hard? And again, this is why I have gray hair, I think. And so this is a very simple, not complete, list of all the functions that a CISO has to worry about. And it's not easy. And this current approach has proven not to work. This approach has proven not to work. Where in my old job, I had to get 83 tools, negotiate with the 83 vendors, hire some consultant to integrate them. When I upgrade one of them, it breaks the integration. And I don't really get the flow of data through the products end to end. And this is what doesn't work, because I see something in the one, but I can't move it through to the other systems because they're not built for integration. And I think this is a broken model that needs to change in this market. And that's where Microsoft is going, to make it easier and cheaper for you so you can do more with less. And that's not just a marketing tagline, That's my commitment as far as a sort of a legacy before I'm done with this game of cybersecurity. And that's where we're going. All right, so how is Microsoft making this better? Look, scale matters. 800,000 customers that we can leverage and actually protect. So when we see one thing happening in one company, we can apply the inoculation, if you will, to others. 69 trillion, this is a new thing that came out just 4 days ago. When I gave a similar presentation in Albania last week, it was 43 trillion. So we're trying to collect as much as we possibly can, because AI will allow, the more data the better, so we can actually see trends and things to make you safer, so you don't have to do all the work. But we're not just seeing stuff, we're taking action. And this is what I'm most proud of, taking action. Not only tracking the nation states and these attacker groups and seeing what they're doing, but we're blocking things. And the next slide, I want to show you some of the other data about what we're doing to make the world a little safer. In this PowerPoint, the globe actually spins, so my apologies for the animation not working. But look, I'm not going to read all the data, but you see it. You know, almost 3 million sites, bad sites blocked, 10,000 criminal groups removed. So again, we're not just seeing things, we're actually taking action on your behalf so you don't have to worry about these attacks moving forward. Now, these bad guys are really smart, and they move, and we tear down one thing and they build it up at another place. But this is where we are committed with law enforcement, with governments, with you, so that we can work together as a partnership so that we can make the world safer. We saw that, see that 531,000 URLs? A huge chunk during the pandemic, early days of COVID, were around COVID bad sites. So the attackers are really smart of taking something that's going on in the market, whether it's an election or a COVID or a sports event, and taking advantage and tricking the user into doing things they wouldn't normally do. So we have to be aware of what the motivations are of the attacker and how we, Microsoft and you, can make this a little bit safer. All right, so what are we doing? Remember back to the slide where we had all the boxes for everything the CISO needed to do? We collapsed that into those 50 product categories into this. And so when Charlie Bell runs all the engineering for our products. He built AWS. He's by all accounts a really good platform builder. He said, look, we're going to make this simpler for our customers, and we're going to do multi-platform support. Not just Microsoft, which is the history, the heritage of Microsoft, but we're going to support multi-cloud, multi-OS. Because most companies, they don't have a pure Microsoft shop. I mean, most companies have one of everything. So we have to support you where you are in your journey. And that's where we are today. And so we're going to make this simpler, and we're going to support more platforms as time goes on. But this should give you comfort about that Microsoft's moving in the right spot to be able to support you moving forward when you make big bets with us. And then pulling it all together, this is a super simple picture for how we think about the entire ecosystem, from cloud and infrastructure and devices and identity and the platforms, and how we think about getting signals for that to make it simple. Now, this is the first time in my 25 years of being in cybersecurity I've seen one platform pull everything together. And that, I know I'm nerdy, but that makes me excited, because I think now we can finally put a dent in this thing and move forward faster, cheaper, and with more visibility. And that's where we're going. All right, so 5 actions. And again, this is my homework assignment that I like to give. And this is something that I would encourage you to just make sure that you're already set. Now, I am certain for those the CISOs in this room, you're like, oh, Kelly, I've got these things nailed. Awesome. But some people may need to double check to make sure they have them nailed. So here are the 5. 1, I think you should adopt this Picard model. Don't go feature by feature selection, but what is the long-term view and how do I move at a 5-year plan or 3-year plan? So what do I need my destination to be that's going to help me in my collective journey? Not just the one, bell and whistle that you need, but what I'm trying to do. Move to platform. You cannot solve this problem as a CISO. You cannot solve this problem with a best-of-breed point solution. 3, be brilliant at the basics. Again, 98% of the breaches for the last 4 years, 98% are elementary. No MFA, password problems, not well-designed Active Directory, not good identity on the privilege side or the user side. So be brilliant at the basics. 4, you got to get privileged access under control. That is my number one thing to do, because so that we can prevent them moving laterally in the organization. And then optimize your architecture. Most architectures today in security and IT were built in the 1990s, maybe early 2000s. And the way I would build Active Directory or my user repository today is very different than when I built it 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. So my encouragement is to rethink your architecture that's going to help you not only prevent a breach, but also, if you have one, you limit the exposure. So I was part of an organization a while back that we had a ransomware attack on our AD domain. And by the way, we had 90 domains, 90. It was big. Thank goodness we had the right architecture, because if we didn't, it was that ransomware was contained within that one domain structure. And if we didn't have the right design of that, it would have spread to all 90 domains, and it would have been devastating. So the architecture of your security environment matters. And so I think you have to really rethink how it looks. And we've learned of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, thousands of breaches that we've helped companies recover from. We've learned what are the standards that we see all the time that people are missing. What are the configuration problems? What are the design flaws that was maybe good back in early 2000, but not are good today? So that's my 5 actions that I would just leave you with, just to make sure that you're as safe as you can. And the last thing I'll say, look, we're committed, Microsoft, we're committed to be your partner, to help you on this journey, not just by yourself, but in this ecosystem for how we need to work so that collectively we can be better. So thanks for allowing me to spend some time. Take care.